I've been sleeping with him behind your back for 6 months. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I froze, my mind scrambling to comprehend what Carla, my fiancée, the woman I had loved with every fiber of my being, had just confessed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My entire body was locked in a state of disbelief. Carla had always been my everything. We were supposed to get married in 2 months. Our lives were intertwined, plans, dreams, promises. How could she say that? Her eyes, once full of love, now looked distant, almost cold. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. She simply admitted it. The betrayal. The affair. She wasn't even sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, Alex, she continued, her voice trembling but her words unwavering. But I can't live a lie anymore. He's the one I've always loved. I never stopped loving him. My stomach twisted in knots as she revealed the shocking truth. The man she had been seeing wasn't some stranger from work. No, it was someone from her past, the man she had once called her first love. The one she had abandoned years ago for me. But now, he had resurfaced, and suddenly, I wasn't enough. For 6 months, I had been living a comfortable life. I thought I was the one she wanted. The one who had always been there. The one she'd chosen. But it was all a facade. Carla's heart was never really mine. And now, she was walking away. I stared at her, my chest tightening. My whole world was crumbling at that moment. She was leaving me for him. And then, she said something that I would never forget, I'm not coming back, Alex. I'm going to him. I hope you can understand. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. I met Carla at a coffee shop 5 years ago, in a moment that felt like fate. She was sitting alone, reading a book, her dark hair falling perfectly around her shoulders. Something about her presence made everything else fade into the background. I was drawn to her energy, her quiet confidence, the way she laughed at the smallest things. At the time, I was going through a rough patch in my life, struggling with my career, unsure of where I was headed. But when I saw Carla, everything changed. She was different from anyone I'd ever met. Warm, intelligent, kind, but with an air of mystery. We started talking that day, and one conversation led to another, and then another. We quickly became inseparable. She was the person I wanted to share everything with. I introduced her to my friends, my family, hell, I even thought about moving in together just a year into our relationship. She made me feel like I was worth something, like I was capable of more than I had ever believed. But even early on, there were things I didn't understand about her. There were moments when she seemed distant, almost unreachable. I would catch her staring off into space, lost in thought, and when I asked if everything was okay, she would smile and say, "It's nothing, just my mind wandering." I never questioned it. I didn't want to. Carla was the one who had come into my life like a whirlwind, sweeping me off my feet. I trusted her deeply. What I didn't know, what she'd never shared, was that there was someone from her past, someone she had loved before me, someone who had always held a part of her heart. She never mentioned him. I just assumed he was a footnote in her history, a chapter she'd closed long ago. And I believed that with every fiber of my being. After all, Carla was with me now. But that was my first mistake. Trusting that someone could just let go of a first love. As time passed, our relationship deepened. We made plans, built dreams. We talked about getting married, having kids, and moving to a house in the suburbs. It seemed perfect, almost too perfect. But something in the back of my mind kept nagging at me. Carla, for all her warmth, seemed like she was still holding something back. I would sometimes find her texting late at night, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone, her eyes focused, but not on me. She'd claim it was nothing, but I didn't buy it. Yet, I dismissed my instincts. I was happy. She made me happy. But as the months passed, cracks began to show. Small things at first, her mood seemed to shift for no reason, or she would seem distant even when we were together. I thought it was work stress or something else. I never imagined it was because of him. Looking back, I can see the signs now. The late-night phone calls that she would always take in private, the sudden bursts of energy when she talked about an old friend from college. She was always very careful not to mention him by name, but I knew. I knew there was someone she wasn't being fully honest about. One night, I confronted her. I asked her directly, "Who is he? What's going on between you two?" Her face drained of color, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. But she told me everything. Or so I thought. "I swear, Alex," she said, her voice shaking, "there's nothing going on. It's in the past. I swear. It's over." But was it really? After that conversation, I believed her. Or at least, I tried to. I was in love, and love, for me, meant trust. So, I buried my doubts. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers. As the months passed, Carla became more distracted. She'd cancel plans at the last minute, or leave in the middle of conversations with excuses that didn't make sense. I thought she was just busy, overwhelmed by life. But the truth, as it turned out, was much darker. That's when the texts began. She'd leave her phone unattended, buzzing with notifications, and I, foolishly, opened it. There it was. A message from a name I didn't recognize: "I miss you. I still think about you. Always have. J." The message was brief, but the weight of it hit me like a ton of bricks. J. The name was familiar. I had seen it before in Carla's phone, but she'd always dismissed it, brushing it off with a quick explanation. But now, it all clicked. I knew. This was him. The man from her past. The one she could never truly forget. I should have confronted her then, but I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to. I had already ignored so many signs, so many warnings. I convinced myself that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering dangerously close to the truth. And then, just a week later, Carla dropped the bombshell. "I'm leaving you for him, Alex," she said, her words cutting through me like a knife. "I've always loved him. He was my first love. And I'm going back to him. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to end like this." Her voice shook with a combination of guilt and relief. But there was no regret. No true sorrow. As she packed her things, I realized the truth: all those years we spent together, everything I thought we had built, was just a story. A lie she had told herself, and one I had blindly believed. It wasn't just an affair. It was the fact that Carla had never truly let go of her first love, the man who still held a place in her heart even after all these years. And now, I was the one who had to face the painful truth. I stood there, watching her leave, my chest heavy with betrayal. The woman I had loved was walking out of my life, and in her place, was the specter of a past I would never understand. And all I could do was watch as she disappeared. It wasn't until Carla left that I realized how deeply I had been living in the dark. The apartment felt hollow, a cavern of memories that now seemed like cruel jokes. She was gone, just like that, and I was left holding nothing but the weight of her betrayal. The worst part was that I didn't even know the full story. Her words that night, "I'm leaving you for him," were sharp and final, but they didn't explain why. What had happened? How had we gone from the future we'd planned to this devastating end? The days that followed felt like a blur. I called her, left messages, desperate for answers. But Carla wouldn't pick up. She was gone, and it was clear she didn't want me anywhere near her. She didn't even seem to care how much I was hurting. It was as if she had turned off a switch, no longer the woman I had shared my life with, but someone else entirely. Then, 3 days later, something unexpected happened. I was sitting in our living room, trying to piece together the scattered fragments of our life, when my phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story. She's not telling you everything. But I am." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Who was this? My hands shook as I read the message again, trying to make sense of it. My mind raced through possibilities. Could it be someone Carla had been in contact with? Someone who knew more than I did? The message was ominous, but it felt like a lifeline, a shred of truth I could grasp at. I didn't waste any time. I replied instantly. "Who are you? What do you mean?" The response came swiftly. "I'm the one she was really in love with. The one she's been lying to you about." A jolt of realization struck me. This wasn't just some anonymous person. This was him. The man from Carla's past, the one she'd left for me, the one she'd never fully let go of. And now, he was reaching out to me. The message didn't end there. It went on. "I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering why I'm doing this, why I'm telling you all this now. It's because Carla never had the courage to tell you the full truth. She's been lying to you about her feelings for me for a long time. And I can prove it." I felt my heart race. My fingers trembled as I typed my reply. "Prove it? What do you mean?" The answer came almost immediately. "I have pictures. I have texts. I have proof that she never stopped loving me, Alex. That she's been with me the whole time, behind your back. She's been playing both of you, and I'm done being the second choice." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My head spun. Pictures. Texts. Carla had always claimed it was in the past, just memories, nothing more. But this was something entirely different. "How long has this been going on?" Before I could even respond, another text came through. This one was a screenshot. My eyes scanned the image, and the color drained from my face. It was a photo of Carla. And she wasn't alone. There, in the picture, she was standing in a park, her hand intertwined with a man's. The man's face wasn't visible, but I knew immediately who it was. It was him, the man she had been so careful not to mention. The man who was now a ghost haunting our relationship. My breath caught in my throat. How long had she been seeing him? How many times had she lied to me about where she was? The next message came just as quickly. "There's more, Alex. I've been patient with her, thinking that maybe she'd come back to me on her own, but now, I see that she never will. She's been using you. She always came back to me, Alex. She couldn't stay away. You were just a distraction. I'm sorry, man, but I can't sit back anymore. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, had been deceiving me the entire time. All those late nights, all those unexplained absences, this was what was really happening. She had been with him behind my back. She had never stopped loving him, and I was just the second choice, the rebound. But there was something else in the message, something that made my blood run cold. There's something else you need to know, Alex. Carla's been planning this for a long time. She told me about you. Told me how she couldn't get you out of her head. But she also said that once she was done with you, she was going to marry you. She needed to keep you around long enough to make it look like you were the one she wanted. I sat there, unable to breathe. My mind was spiraling. She had been playing with me. She had been planning her escape, manipulating me all along. The betrayal wasn't just in the affair, it was in the careful, cold way she had orchestrated everything. I was nothing more than a pawn in a game she was playing. A game where the stakes were my heart, my trust, my future. Just as I was about to reply, another message popped up. I don't want to be the bad guy here, Alex. But she deserves to know that you're not the only one who's been hurt. She's been lying to both of us. I sank back into the couch, overwhelmed by the enormity of the situation. What was I supposed to do now? The woman I had loved, the woman I had been planning a future with, had betrayed me in ways I couldn't even begin to fathom. And now, the man she had left behind, the one who had never truly gone away, was telling me everything I had been too blind to see. The question that haunted me now was simple: how could I ever trust anyone again? Days turned into a blur. The messages kept coming from him, each one more damning than the last. I didn't know how much more I could take. I was spiraling, consumed by the depth of Carla's betrayal. But the worst part wasn't just the affair, it was the realization that everything I thought was true was a lie. Carla had manipulated me, played me for the fool, and now I was left with nothing but a pile of shattered dreams. And then things got even more complicated. The texts from him continued, but they began to take on a different tone. At first, he'd been angry, vengeful, almost gloating. But then, he started offering something I hadn't expected: help. He sent me more evidence, more details about Carla's behavior, but this time, it wasn't just about the affair. It was about her lies, the way she had carefully manipulated me, how she had played both of us like puppets. One message, in particular, stood out. "I think you need to know everything, Alex. Because you're not the only one she's been lying to. She's been lying to me too." My fingers trembled as I read those words. What did that mean? How could she have been lying to him? Hadn't he already known about her feelings for me? The man she had always claimed to be, just a part of her past. My mind raced as I waited for him to explain. The next message came like a punch to the gut. She told me she was done with me, that she was over me, that she couldn't get back together with me. But I found out the truth the hard way. You weren't her first choice, Alex. And you still aren't. She's been lying to both of us about her feelings. I was just her escape, someone to ease her guilt. And now, she's back to you, playing the perfect fiancé. But trust me, you're not the endgame. I am. It felt like the ground beneath me was giving way. What was he talking about? Was he trying to turn me against her? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was something unsettlingly true in his words. Carla had always been distant, always had an excuse, always had a reason to avoid full commitment. Was I really just a substitute? A man who was there to fill the gaps in her life until he was ready to step back in? My phone buzzed again. This time, the message was different. "You don't understand, do you? You think I'm some kind of villain. But the truth is, she's been lying to both of us for years. I can prove it. I can show you that she's been stringing you along while keeping me on the sidelines. You've always been the backup plan. It's time you saw the truth. Call me." The words echoed in my head. Carla had never stopped loving him, that much was clear. But was it possible that she had always been playing me, all along? That I had been nothing more than a placeholder until he was ready to come back into the picture? I couldn't just let it go. I needed answers. I needed to confront her. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no idea who Carla truly was anymore. I didn't recognize her. The next evening, I decided to visit Carla. I couldn't just sit in this apartment, drowning in my thoughts, anymore. I had to see her. I had to understand the depths of her lies. When I arrived at her apartment, I stood at the door for what felt like an eternity, my hand hovering over the doorbell. I could hear muffled voices inside. She wasn't alone. The sound of laughter echoed through the walls, and a rush of adrenaline shot through me. Who was with her? I rang the bell, my heart pounding in my chest. After a moment, Carla answered the door, her face freezing when she saw me standing there. Alex?" Her voice cracked, but she quickly recovered, trying to put on a calm facade. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice cold. "Right now." She hesitated, then opened the door wider, stepping aside to let me in. I walked past her, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of who had been laughing just moments before. Then I saw him. Him. The man from the past. The one she had left for me. He was sitting casually on the couch, looking up at me with a strange mixture of guilt and smugness in his eyes. Jay, the same man who had sent me those texts. The one who had been reaching out to tell me everything Carla had been hiding. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Carla's face flushed. Alex, this isn't what you think. I didn't wait for her to finish. You're still with him? After everything? After us? You're still lying to me? She took a step toward me, reaching out as if to comfort me, but I took a step back. I couldn't touch her. I couldn't let myself fall for any more of her lies. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. It's complicated, okay? Jay and I. No. I cut her off, the anger welling up inside me like a flood. You don't get to explain this away. You've been lying to me for years. Telling me you loved me, that we had a future. But all this time, you were still in love with him. I was confused, she pleaded, her voice breaking. But I've chosen you, Alex. I wanted to be with you. Jay stood up, his posture relaxed, almost smug. You're not the first person she's done this to, you know. She's always loved me, and now that I'm back, it's clear that she's only been stringing you along. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I turned to look at Carla, searching her eyes for any sign of sincerity. But I didn't find it. There was no remorse. No apology. Only a faint flicker of regret, the shadow of a love that was never really mine. I turned away, my hands shaking. I couldn't be here anymore. I needed to get out. As I walked toward the door, I heard Carla call out behind me, Alex, please. Don't leave like this. We can talk about this. But it was too late. I wasn't sure I could ever look at her the same way again. The night I left Carla's apartment, I didn't just walk away from her. I walked away from the person I thought I was, someone who had trusted without question, someone who had believed that love was enough to make a relationship work. But trust was gone now, and so was my sense of self-respect. What had she taken from me? A future. A family. My dignity. And now, a burning fury began to rise in me, a desire to make her and him feel the depth of their betrayal. The thought of Jay sitting there, so smug, so self-assured, infuriated me. He had been right all along, Carla had never stopped loving him, never truly loved me. And now, he was back, claiming his place in her life. He thought he had won. But what he didn't realize was that I wasn't going to let them walk away from this without consequences. No. I wasn't going to let Carla get away with destroying everything I had built for us. It was time for revenge. Not just petty, emotional vengeance. But something calculated, something that would make them regret ever playing with my heart. I spent the next few days in a haze, replaying everything in my mind. How have I gotten here? I thought about every moment with Carla, the smiles, the promises, the laughter. They all felt like a cruel joke now. But each memory also gave me something else, clarity. I realized that this wasn't just about punishing them. It was about reclaiming my life, my power, and my dignity. I couldn't let them think they could walk away without consequences. I wasn't sure where to start. But one thing was clear, I needed to get to them, and to do that, I had to be smarter, more patient than they were. They had been playing a game where the stakes were my heart. Now, it was my turn. Carla had always been meticulous about her image. She was proud of the life she had built, our life, our story. The perfect couple, the doting fiancée, the woman who had everything together. To anyone looking in from the outside, Carla's life seemed flawless. But it wasn't. It was a lie. And that was where my plan began. I needed to expose her, to strip away the facade of perfection she had so carefully constructed. If Carla wanted to leave me for him, fine. But I wasn't going to let her walk away without the world seeing her for what she truly was, a woman who had never been truthful, a woman who had betrayed me in the most intimate and painful way possible. I started by visiting a few of Carla's friends, the ones who had always praised her, admired her. I told them bits of the truth, not everything, just enough to make them question who she really was. I dropped subtle hints about her affair with Jay, the fact that she had been spending time with him in secret. It was a dangerous move, but it worked. Over time, word began to spread, and soon, Carla was no longer the woman people admired. She became the subject of hushed conversations, raised eyebrows, and whispers behind her back. At work, it wasn't hard to start rumors about her. Carla was a high-ranking executive in her company, and her reputation had been built on trust and reliability. But I knew that trust was fragile, especially when it was based on a lie. I used my connections to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of her colleagues, nothing too overt, just enough to shake the foundation of her professional life. It wasn't long before stories of her affair with Jay began circulating in her office. Carla's spotless reputation was starting to crumble. People who once respected her began questioning her loyalty and professionalism. I could see her life slipping through her fingers, and the satisfaction of seeing her uneasy, uncomfortable, made my heart race. But Carla wasn't the only one who had played me. Jay was the one who had knowingly walked back into her life. He had been waiting, patient, biding his time. And now that he was back, I couldn't let him get away with it either. I needed to expose him too. But not just as Carla's ex. No, I needed to show him as the opportunistic liar that he was. The first thing I did was track down Jay's personal business dealings. He had always been a little too smug about his success, often mentioning how well his business ventures were doing. I wasn't a fool. I knew that Jay had skeletons in his closet. No one was perfect, not even him. I hired a private investigator, someone who could dig into Jay's past and find anything that would tarnish his reputation. It didn't take long. I uncovered a few questionable financial transactions that would raise eyebrows if exposed to the right people. Jay was involved in some shady investments, money laundering schemes, ties to less-than-legal businesses. It wasn't enough to put him in jail, but it was enough to make people question his integrity, especially the people who mattered most to him. I made sure to anonymously leak this information to a few key people in his network. I wasn't just going to ruin his professional life. I wanted to make sure he felt the sting of betrayal. Just like I had. I wanted to make him feel like he had no safe space to run, no place to hide from the consequences of his actions. And when the first rumors began to surface about Jay's shady dealings, I knew it was working. He started losing business partners, and his social circle began to distance themselves. The smugness was gone from his face. Now, he was the one scrambling to cover up his own mess. With Carla's reputation in tatters and Jay starting to crumble professionally, I felt like I was finally gaining control. But there was still one final piece of my plan to execute. And it would be the most devastating part. Carla, in her desperation, began trying to reach out to me. She apologized profusely, claiming she was sorry for everything, begging me to take her back. But it was too late. She had already destroyed any chance of reconciliation. I wasn't interested in her apologies. Not anymore. I needed her to know that what she had done was unforgivable. And to do that, I needed to break her. I arranged a meeting with her. It was almost cinematic, me, standing in front of her, cold and calculated, watching as she realized the full extent of what I had done. She showed up looking fragile, desperate. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair disheveled. But I was unmoved. "You think you can just walk back into my life after everything?" I asked, my voice flat. I was wrong, Alex. "I know I was wrong," she stammered. "Please, just give me a chance." No, I interrupted, watching her face crumble. You don't get to say that. You don't get to come back. Not after everything you've done. I let the silence hang for a moment, the tension thick in the air. And then I hit her with the final blow. I've already made sure the people who matter know the truth about you. And Jay. You'll be lucky if he ever trusts you again. Her face turned pale. It was like watching her finally realize she had no one left to turn to. I had one. I never loved you, Carla, I said, my voice filled with finality. You were never the woman I thought you were. She was speechless, broken. The woman who had stolen my heart was now a shadow of her former self, and I felt no pity. I had taken back my power. When Carla and Jay saw their lives unraveling, it was a sight I couldn't help but savor. I had made them pay, and the satisfaction was sweet. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. It was about understanding that the love I had once given so freely was a weapon, one I could wield when necessary. As for me, I moved on. Slowly but surely. I found peace in knowing that I was no longer the fool. I was no longer the one who had been played. But the best part? The day I received a message from my first love, someone who had been there for me long before Carla and Jay ever existed. Maybe the game wasn't over after all. The aftermath of everything was almost surreal. I watched as Carla and Jay struggled to put the pieces of their lives back together, pieces that would never quite fit the same way again. Their world, which had once seemed so perfect, had collapsed into a pile of regrets and broken dreams. And as I watched them fall from grace, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. But it wasn't just the satisfaction of revenge that I felt. No, it was more than that. It was the quiet, powerful realization that I was finally free. The hold they had over me, the lies they had wrapped around my heart, were gone. I was no longer the man who had been hurt, I was the one who had controlled the outcome. I had taken back my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. In the end, it wasn't just about making them pay, it was about showing myself that I was worth more than the games they played. Carla tried to reach out multiple times after our final confrontation. Texts, calls, even emails. Begging for forgiveness, promising she would do anything to fix things. But I ignored them all. There was no fixing what she had broken. No apology could ever undo the hurt she caused. The door to reconciliation was shut, locked, and bolted shut for good. She had lost me for good, and in truth, I had lost any desire to ever look back. Jay, on the other hand, wasn't much better. His fall from grace had been swift and brutal. His business dealings were under investigation, and the people he had once called friends were distancing themselves. He had played a dangerous game, and now, the consequences were catching up to him. He tried to salvage what little he had left, reaching out to me, claiming he was sorry, and that he didn't realize how much pain he had caused me. But there was no coming back from what he had done. Not in my eyes. He had been a part of the lies and the betrayal, and I had made sure everyone around him knew the truth. Jay had lost not only his reputation but also any semblance of power over me. And then there was me. I walked away from that chapter of my life, not just with the feeling of revenge but with something more important, clarity. It was like the fog had lifted. No longer was I shackled by the weight of betrayal, the endless question of whether I could trust again. I had seen their true faces. And in doing so, I had freed myself from the darkness they had cast over me. But I was more than just a man who had been betrayed. I was someone who had been reborn from the ashes of a broken relationship. I knew the road ahead would be long, but it was a road I was now prepared to walk alone. I knew that my past would always be a part of me, but I had learned the hard way that the future was mine to shape. That's when I met her, someone who had also experienced betrayal, someone who had been through her own heartbreak and was now, like me, starting over. But I wasn't ready for what was to come. Not yet. As time went on, I realized that the story of Carla and Jay was only one chapter in a much bigger picture. The pain I had felt wasn't something that could simply be wiped away. It had changed me, shaped me in ways I couldn't have predicted. And though revenge had given me a temporary sense of victory, it didn't heal everything. There was still a part of me that felt empty, a part of me that had to learn how to trust again. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new story. A story of healing, of growth, of finding out who I really was when everything I thought I knew was taken away. And who knows what the future holds? I didn't know yet, but one thing was certain, I would never make the same mistakes again. Maybe I'd find love again. Maybe I'd discover that there were better people out there, people who would treat me the way I deserved. Or maybe I would learn how to be okay with being alone. The future was full of possibilities. But one thing was for sure, I would be ready for whatever came next. But that wasn't the end of the story. There's more to come. The world doesn't stop turning just because one chapter ends. In fact, it's the twists and turns of life that make it so damn interesting. You see, I'm not the only one who's been wronged, not the only one left in the wake of betrayal. As I started moving forward, I realized that every person has a story to tell, each of them carrying their own scars, their own heartaches. And there are some stories that are far from over. What happens when the people you trust turn out to be just as broken as you? When you realize that revenge isn't always the answer, but you can't let go of the rage that burns inside you? And what happens when the truth finally comes out, when the lies you've been told for years come crashing down? These questions, these twists, they're far from over. In fact, there are more stories I have to share. More journeys of heartbreak, redemption, and, yes, revenge. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. So, if you've enjoyed this journey, if you've been as captivated by the twists and turns of betrayal as I was, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. You don't want to miss the next chapter in this saga. There's more to come, more heartbreak, more revenge, and more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't miss it. See you next time.